Hello again. It's Sunday the 25th. I'm sitting about 30 miles south of Raleigh, and we are getting a little bit of that winter storm. Even though I am from Nebraska and frankly laugh at this storm, to tell you the truth. It is enough that I'm not going outside today at all. It's just a little dusting of ice and frozen rain. Now, I'll record a video of it and show you guys at the end so y'all see what I am talking about. But on to the topic. I was reading an article this morning, from Psychology, titled Psychology and Philosophy of Anger and How to Control Your Anger. It was published in Psychology Today, December 9th of 2018, if you want to look it up. It was written by Neil Burton, a doctor, I'm assuming, of psychiatry or psychology, although he did have an MD, so it's probably a psychiatrist. He had a lot of good things to say. I'm just going to quickly read you a couple of the snippets. Anger is a common and potentially destructive emotion that turns many a human life into a living hell. It's hard to imagine a truly wise person like the Dalai Lama ever losing their temper. By careful meditation, we can learn to control our anger and maybe even banish it entirely from our lives. That's what he opened with, and he's absolutely right. By the way, I have not in any way, shape, or form been able to banish anger from my life. But that's my goal. He talked a little bit about different kinds of anger in the article, or how more specifically, how anger can manifest itself. It can manifest itself with other emotions, most frequently with resentment and bitterness. These are unpleasant emotions, and they often are involving anger that arises from a real or perceived injustice. On top of that, if it involves someone close or trusted, it is likely very complicated and intensified by the feelings of betrayal. He nailed that one. People are said to express anger. He says, anger is an acute response to a concrete or symbolic threat, and it aims to avert or diffuse that threat. In contrast, resentment is more of a chronic and long-term thing that is largely internalized. I call that allowing someone to live in your head rent-free. Resentment can give rise to retaliatory actions, and I call that being passive-aggressive. It's really just that we are harboring a resentment and letting it stew in us until we see an opportunity to get back at them. Sometimes we're not even aware that this is what we're doing, but it is. Sometimes it's violent. Most often it is much subtler in nature. Resentment, though, is, in fact, born of anger, and without anger, there can be no resentment. Then there's another thing that he talks about with regards to anger, and this is contempt. Contempt is often described as a combination of anger and disgust. It can either be hot or cold, but the cardinal feature of contempt is the denial or rejection of a particular claim by the person you're angry with, on the grounds that their claim is unjustified solely because the person making the claim has violated some norm or expectation and therefore compromised him or herself. And you have contempt for them. Thus understood, contempt is an attempt to invalidate the claim of the object, the other person, and in so doing, reinforcing the claims of the subject, you. Philosopher Robert C. Solomon has argued that contempt is directed at those of a lower class. In your mind, resentment is actually just contempt, but of a higher class status. And anger is just those of a similar class status. So if we're all on equal footing, we're angry. If we're not, we're either contemptible or contemptuous or resentful. If this is correct, then the flattening of social structures should have led to a rise in anger and a corresponding fall in contempt and resentment, but that hasn't happened. As societies have gained more equality, that hasn't happened because we decide actually on our social status internally, as well as the social status of society may put on us. We may think we're smarter or have less intelligence than others. We may think we're morally superior, or we may be a person who thinks we're of ourselves as weak-willed and therefore morally inferior. Resentment and contempt will never leave us because it would require of us something very hard, and that is self-reflection and brutal honesty about ourselves with ourselves. Aristotle said about anger, "For in everything it is no easy task to find the middle." Anyone can get angry. That's easy. Anyone can give or spend money. That's easy. But to do this in the right way, to the right person, to the right extent, and at the right time, with right motive, and in the right way, that is not easy for everyone. Nor is it easy, therefore. Goodness is both rare and laudable and notable. That's what Aristotle had to say about anger. Here's the thing that I have realized over my life. You see this cup? It's my coffee cup. I use it every morning. It's kind of faded. It's about 20 years old. Actually, closer to 30. It's from a yearly convention of a 12-step group that I attended. I bought it when I was attending a convention for that 12-step group. I've in the past told you a little about my life. Suffice it to say that when I was younger, from about the age of 13 through to the age of 21, if someone gave me something and said, it could kill you, or it could get you really high, and I would say, it could kill me or get me high. Kill me, get me high. Let me have it. Part of the 12-step program tells you that in order to better yourself, you have to break free of your addictions, obviously. But that requires, if it's going to be successful, it requires rigorous and brutal honesty with yourself about yourself. Rigorous honesty and admitting to yourself what you are, who you are, and what you may have done, how you may have acted towards others, and what were your true motives in your actions. When I was entering the ministry, one of the things that the Methodist Church does very well, in my opinion, at least with the conference that I was in as I was entering the ministry, is a very thorough and required vetting of your life and a very, very thorough vetting of your psychological state. I entered the ministry about 20 years after I had cleaned myself up. So for 20 years, I have been working very hard on being rigorously and brutally honest with myself about myself. So I had to go see this psychoanalyst. And by the time we were done, this guy said to me, Steve, you're the most self-righteous person I am self-righteous. Freudian slip. You're the most self-aware person I have ever met in my life. I'm proud of that. But he also added something to that. Something that I kind of try to brush under the carpet sometimes. He said to me, the problem you have is you can't get it from here to here. I've thought a lot over the following years about getting it from here to here. The mistake we all make, me included, with being able to control our emotions, which is a lot of what he meant when he said I'm self-aware. Honestly. I know my weaknesses. I know my strengths. I know where I can get myself in trouble. It's all emotions, really. The problem is that we all believe our emotions are created by actions of others and foisted upon us. Sorry, that's just factually not true. People will get and they do get very upset with me when I say this. And I'm sorry, you can be upset too. But that's not going to change the fact that your emotions My emotions are 110% self-created and self-driven. Emotions, all emotions, come from within side of us. Therefore, it is your brain, your soul, that creates those emotions. Emotions are totally internal to us. They are totally created by us. Once we realize this is the key. We suddenly understand the Serenity Prayer and realize that our entire lives, we just didn't get it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. This means everything outside of us. Everything. The strength to change the things I can. This means changing how we choose to react. The one thing we actually can control in our lives. And the wisdom to know the difference. That just simply means knowing what those two first lines of the prayer mean. Part of the big problem that I see in social media, since this is on social media, and I'm basically talking to people on social media. And I will point out to you, I'm saying we, not you. We are all up there getting mentally ill, constantly raging about this event or that event, as though our rage has any effect on the event at all. There's even a term for people who are posting rage-inducing posts. Rage baiting. Here's the secret. Everybody does it. You do it. I've done it. At rigorous honesty. I generally do seriously try not to engage in it. I fail more often than I would care to admit. Listen to what I say, not what I do. Ministers get to say that. When it comes to the rage bait and the rage craziness, my general response is I literally just mute the rage baiters. Gone. I'm not going to engage in that crap. And I have muted thousands. I don't block anybody. I think I've blocked 2 people. I don't block anybody, but I'm not going to listen to false, intentional lies intentionally created to induce rage. I'm not going to do that. Having said that, there are some people that I follow, and I watch them cycle through getting mentally ill by succumbing to the rage baiters. Eventually, they seem to come back to an even plateau. But watching them rage over this or that actually poisons me as well. The reason I don't mute them is because, at least permanently, I've actually muted some people temporarily as they rage. I just can't take it. It's not healthy for me, so I mute them. So I don't mute them permanently. And that is because I've followed them long enough to know that there's a lot more to them than just what I see in a post. And by the way, that's one of the keys to having a successful, healthy relationship for all of us. Human beings are very complex creatures, and human beings are very, very imperfect creatures. And human beings will all have their moments of insanity, responding to rage bait or even rage baiting themselves. And that doesn't define who they are. Enough said on that. Back to anger. The important thing is to know the anger that you are experiencing is driven by you, created by you. You must choose to become angry in order to be angry. Back in the beginning, the very first thing the doctor said when he was talking about this is, it's hard to imagine a truly wise person like the Dalai Lama ever losing his temper. It's because the Dalai Lama understands anger is his choice, and anger is an emotion, and that he chooses to allow it to grow, or he denies its ability to grow because he is in charge of his body and his mind, not an evolutionary developed emotion. Doesn't rule him, he rules it. Anger has a place. There's a reason we evolved to have anger. But the thing you need to always remember when you're reading a post, when you're talking to your spouse or a co-worker, anybody, and you start feeling that anger over something rise in you. Anger is incredibly destructive to you, not just on your psyche, but on your physical body as well. It literally physically hurts you to be angry. So why do we have this emotion? Anger has, in my opinion, a very legitimate place, but that place is on the battlefield. The damage, the physical damage that anger does to you is far less than the damage, the physical damage that your opponent may inflict on you if you're not angry. So it's a self-defense emotion. But it is also the most costly physical and psychological emotion for us to engage in. So we need to reserve it to only for those times when it costs less to us to be angry than the cost we would have to pay if we were facing an opponent. This other stuff we talked about begins to come into perspective. Now, I keep my mouth shut many times, actually, nowadays, to things that may be a legitimate reason to be angry. Some of the stuff we see in the news, some of the things that happen to human beings infuriate me sometimes. But I choose instead to specifically not allow myself to continue to get angry. Down the road, I can address it. And I call that having a cold anger. It's not a hot anger. It's not one where I'm not thinking clearly because I'm angry. It's not one where I'm becoming reactionary and having reactions I may regret down the road because it's cool. It's not an emotion that is going to be so destructive to me. And I'll also find my response is going to be much more productive to me and to the object that I am responding to, person or whatever. It's going to be much more rational. It's going to be much more soundly based. It's going to be much more productive to creating a positive outcome from the situation. Know that your anger, your resentment, your contempt, all of those things are your choice. You created them. You created them within you. The object or the target of your anger has nothing to do with the emotions you created within you. You created them. And until you can admit that, you will continue to physically hurt yourself every time you get angry. Your blood pressure will rise. Your heartbeat will rise. This is all wear and tear. We know, along with anger comes very high levels of stress. And this is what makes it so destructive to you. I'm not saying that the objects or a person don't necessarily warrant anger. They may. What I'm saying is you control your emotions. They don't. And anger is an emotion that hurts you. It doesn't hurt them, it hurts you. It doesn't destroy them, it destroys you. The Dalai Lama became a person that people can't imagine getting angry. And they call him wise. And by the way, as an added bonus, people will also call you wise and have wisdom. Much of wisdom is learning the place of anger. And in learning and knowing that anger and all its emotions, all emotions you experience, are self-created within you. Nothing creates them outside of you. Then you can say, God, grant me the wisdom to know the difference and know that you have that wisdom. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Mentioned earlier, I will show you guys the weather. Now, you got to understand, you northerners, this wouldn't slow you down a half second. It's a little tiny bit of snow, but it is frozen. There's ice. New dishwasher, by the way. But for Southerners, this is an unmitigated disaster. My Starlink nice and toasty warm thanks to the heater in the system. But anyway, this is what we're dealing with. And there's going to be a little precipitation coming down till late tonight.